Welcome to the Embodied Eroticism Podcast, your Monday morning dose of shame-free pleasure talk. I'm your host, Robin Hilton. I'm a sex educator by day and living the side hustle dream, supporting women to have the best sex of their life as a sex coach by night and sometimes on weekends too. I'll be bringing you information, inspiration, and plenty of erotic practice ideas to help you prioritize having great sex on your own or with a partner. Welcome to Embodied Eroticism. I'm Robin, and today I have a guest with me.
I'm Elise. Hello.
Hi, Elise. So when I started this podcast, I was like, it's just solo only. But I don't know, it felt right to bring you into this conversation. So let's start with a little bit about you. So who are you? What do you do? What turns you on in life?
That's a great question. And I have to say to all of the people listening that Robin's work is, I'm definitely her ideal client. So that question just now gave me the feels, made me a little uncomfortable, a little hot and bothered. So I think there's something there for sure. So I'm Elise Besler, and I'm going to say what I'm going to answer I'm going to kind of do two birds here. What turns me on is clear communication. And that also happens to be what I do for a living, as I help people claim their voices. I help people show up in their lives and speak up and speak with confidence and set boundaries and express what's on their heart in a way that feels really aligned and not performative and not what they think they need to do. So clear communication turns me on. Legit, like, come on, if a partner asks you how you're doing or they share their feelings with you, oh
Yes.
there's no greater turn on, in my opinion. Talk
It's so
about it.
true. It's so
That
true.
clarity. Ooh.
It is so true.
Yeah.
I love Harry Styles. I love Harry Styles. And to me, like emotion, and that's a big thing that I love. When he had his flag raised at Madison Square Garden last night, and he's watching it go up, and there's tears in his
Yeah.
eyes, and I'm
Yeah.
like, vulnerability and realness and being able to be in that authentic emotion. Oh, that's gold. That's gold.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. And clear communication, like just taking away that should and ought to, and this is how I need to show up, and just being me and communicating that.
Yeah.
All
Nothing
right.
sexier.
Nothing sexier. It is a total turn on. So I had I work as a sex educator for university students, and we had this day a couple days ago where I taught about consent, and it was just a conversation, and it was beautiful. We talked for, get this, 2.5 hours with this group of students, university age students, just talking all things related to consent. And it was such a potent and powerful conversation. And one of the things that they brought up is like, how do I get comfortable in asking someone to have sex with me? How do I get comfortable in asking for what I want so that I can enjoy having sex? All of these things, like all of these things. And I show up to these conversations, and I say, we just have to learn to be uncomfortable in our conversations. We just have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and it's okay. We can be uncomfortable. We can still show up. We can still speak our piece. But I've never actually really given instructions until the
Mm.
other day. I had just attended, so that before this conversation, I had just attended your master class where you taught about how to speak up when something
Yeah.
is really important to you. And I was like, I have a tip. I have something I can share. This is how you do it. And then from that moment, I realized, oh, okay, Elise is the expert here. Let's have this conversation and let's record it and let's put it on YouTube and let's put it on the podcast. And I can refer people to you. And literally at noon today, I had a client whose solution to the thing that she came to the call for is this conversation.
Mm.
So
Yeah. And it's also my solution too. I just wanted to say that, like, I do this work and I also am in the trenches.
yes.
Like, I am in the trenches. Like, it is a, I say it's not a one and done, right? It's a lifelong practice of tapping into the wisdom really of our bodies. And I think that's where the discomfort comes in, is how often, and I know you do a lot of embodiment work with your clients, how often do we take that moment to check in with our body before we speak? If you're like me, before I discovered that that was even a possibility, it's never. Right,
Hmm.
it's never, it's
Hmm.
we don't typically do that. And so I think just the simple act, and I'm going to actually remove the word just, because that's padding it, right? That's saying that it's less than. If we sort of embody the act, or take the step towards the act of checking in with what the strongest sensation is in our body. And this is like, I love the definition of somatic, which is like means in the body. The definition is the body as distinct from the psyche. So it's not thinking about what's going on in our body. No, it's the strongest sensation. And so if I were to say, with the examples that you gave just now, I mean, that oftentimes that'll bring up some, some anxiety feelings, maybe some physical experiences of anxiety in the body, like a pounding heart or a quickened breath, or maybe like a dry mouth, or a throat tightening. What if we were to tap in, and just place our hands on our hearts in those moments before a vulnerable request or a statement like a boundary, and check in with our bodies and then move forward from that place, right? And actually say, hey, listen, to your partner, I'm noticing that my heart is pounding right now. And then to get curious about that. What is that? Why? Like, why is my heart pounding? And that's the S.I.P method that you were talking about. So the first one is a somatic check in, which is what we're doing here. And then the next step is to be curious about it, right? To inquire. Well, why is that? I think it's because I have something really vulnerable to ask you. And then moving the truth is how, is how it's then witnessed, and say, how would you feel about me asking you to have sex with me?
Yeah.
Because then you've got some consent all wrapped up in it,
Yeah.
right?
Beautiful.
I'm feeling vulnerable. I want to share that with you because it is vulnerable. I think I think probably most people, would think that that's a very vulnerable request. And then to also wrap the consent up in it, right? So it's just to check in. And again, I'm going to take the just out. I'm working on unpadding my language right now.
Yes.
So you'll notice that I pull the padding out. I got to pull it out.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
And then I just
Yeah.
wanted to say too that's similar for a boundary.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, checking in and noticing some discomfort, like, ooh, like I'm actually noticing a heaviness in my heart right now. And I think it's because I have a request that I need to make, and the request feels really uncomfortable for me. I need to ask you to please not fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's a way to open up conversation and to speak from our own point of view, especially with boundaries, the B word, right?
Yeah.
Especially with boundaries, because those are so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I that it's so potent, and I want to emphasize the that it's okay to share how you're feeling. I think we sort of get into this idea that we should be feeling like a particular kind of way, or that we need to show up and having figured it out, or having,
Mm.
and I know a lot of your work is with entrepreneurs, and that's a big thing with folks who have to show up and talk about their work. But talking about our sexuality, talking about what brings us pleasure, it's like there is a lot of vulnerability, and um, there's a lot of things wrapped up in sex and sexuality that I think we can really do the world and ourselves so much so much of a service if we just say, like, hey, this thing is uncomfortable, or this thing is vulnerable, or I'm not so sure about this thing, that it's okay to be in that space where you haven't figured it all out. And one of the things I say often to people is that sex actually doesn't come naturally.
Mm.
And talking about sex certainly doesn't come naturally. It's not something
Mhm.
we've been taught. And so it's okay to do it imperfectly, in
Yeah.
the sense that, like, you don't have to have it figured out when you have the conversations. And so I think just naming that feeling is so potent, and
Mm.
it opens such a powerful door to connection. And because and even like an opportunity to speak about shame, to speak about those
Mhm.
hard things. So I just want to say, like, that piece, when you the way that you phrase it, the way that you talk about it, that's why I wanted you to come and talk about this, because I just think that's so powerful.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And also something that came up here for me when I was just listening to you talk is, and how much of that um, shame and, fear and discomfort can we offload and say, that's actually maybe not even mine.
Yes.
Let's
Yeah.
get curious about that, right? Like, that pressure to measure up and to show up in a certain way. Um, I mean, to some degree, we're all, you know, living and personal experiences as well go into this. We're living under this pressure,
Yeah.
right? Varying systems and culture that we're raised in. It's like it feels hard. I mean, it makes it hard, and it's okay to say, you know what, this is hard. And I would encourage anyone who's listening who still finds it challenging, even with the SIP method, to even voice that. You know what, this is hard for me.
Yeah.
This is hard for me. I find this really challenging,
Yeah.
because that's truth,
Yeah.
right? And when we speak from truth, then we create that connection that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So I always give an assignment in on this podcast. There's always, you've listened, there's always something that I want listeners to take away and work with. And I'm curious, what would you say is, and I mean, last week it was like listening to our deep intuition. So that I feel like this really leads on from that, listening to
Yeah.
deep intuition, listening to, what is our body guiding us to do.
Mm.
So, do you have an assignment?
Yes, I do. I think everyone should. I love the idea of that check in. I think that's simple. The first step of that, little method, the small bite of a broader process that I like to teach to my clients, and that I like to practice myself. And I do need to remind myself, I do, is that check in. So actually taking a moment, like, I think there's an opportunity whenever the nervous system response shows up. So like we notice there's the heat, the flushing, or the heart racing, or the freeze, the fight or flight, whenever those experiences show up for us, that's like a cue. That's our body saying, check in. Check in. I'm here. There is a body attached to this great floating orb of a head, and that the body, our body, is wise. And so it's as simple and as challenging as taking a moment. And I always offer to place your hand on your heart when you do this, but to check in and say, okay, what's happening in my body right now? What's that strongest sensation? What am I feeling? Um, and even if you don't even speak from that place, but just to acknowledge that so that you're like, okay, I see you, buddy.
Yeah.
I see you. But likely what will happen, at least in my experience witnessing, um, over the years, is that will allow the conversation to flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So checking in, noticing what the sensations are. And I I I love that idea that like feelings have sensations.
Mm.
What's going on for us has a sensation, and when those sensations are uncomfortable, we tend to just bulldoze over them. But
Yeah.
feeling them and naming them, in my experience, it diffuses it just a little, like enough
Mhm.
to be able to move through that conversation. So
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate that. So just one like brief recap of the SIP method.
Sure. So
Yeah,
it's the S is somatic check in. So that's checking in with our bodies. And that's sensation based.
yeah,
So, as much as possible to stay in physical sensation.
yeah,
And it might be easy to go into like, I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry, but it's more like my heart is, my arms are,
yeah,
my feet are, right? My throat is. And then the I in the SIP method is to inquire, right? To get curious. What's that? What's going on? What's happening in my body? So I've acknowledged it and then I inquire about it. Oh, right. I think that's happening because I just witnessed this or
mhm,
because I'm about to.
yeah.
And then the P is practice.
Yes,
So whether that is with the partner or the person that you're setting the boundary with, I always find that practicing this method and really any truth speaking methodology on the outside of when we need to access it the most is actually the most helpful. And that's because when our nervous systems are dysregulated, it's harder to access it, right? In the moment. It doesn't mean we can't, it's just that there's a lot more going on. And so I say find a friend or a video camera that you can practice practice it on the outside of when you need to access it so that when you're activated you have more of an opportunity to pull that in. Yeah. Sip,
thank you.
sip,
So
sip.
good, so good. So I know you're launching a program,
Hmm.
and it is just about giving folks and I'm assuming you target primarily women with your work and
Mm.
entrepreneurs, creative. So I'm going to let you describe that, but it's about speaking up, like learning how to speak up, and
Yeah.
it's called Flourish, which is such a beautiful name. But please just tell us the overview of this program. What is it? What is it? Who is it for?
Sure.
And why are you so excited about it?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. I'll start with that because that actually just gave my heart a little flutter. I'm going to use the SIP method actually right now.
Yes.
So I am noticing that my heart actually gets a little flutter in it when I'm talking about this work and when I talk about this program in particular. And when I think about why, I think it's because I recognize that it's so vital to so many women, so many people who have experienced misogyny and who have grown up, with those narratives that say your voice doesn't matter, or when you use your voice, you're being too much. And so it is for anyone who is an entrepreneur or a creative and an artist. I actually have had some inquiries from artists as well, whether it be fine artists or writers or even musical artists. And really, it's an opportunity to help women feel at home in their body when they want to speak up,
Yeah.
and when they want to speak up, particularly about their work, because I think that there's such a piece around not bragging, you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
so we're on this planet to do epic shit,
Yeah.
and we're on this planet to do the work that we came here to do, like that lives in our soul. And so yeah, the program is really about that, and it's about expression, and it's about practice, and
Mhm.
being witnessed in a space that's compassionate.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful and so needed. I don't know, I think I tell you this almost every day, how much I feel like this work is needed in the world.
Mm,
And, there have been times that I've supported people who have taken coaching programs, specifically the same coaching program I took, but were like nervous about launching, nervous about
mm,
putting the work out into the world. And I always, I think back to the women that I have supported, and that was our biggest stumbling block, and something that I think there is a very specific answer to that, and I feel like you've got it. And that is
mm.
so exciting. And so as these women come to me into my orbit, I'm sending them your way. And I hope
Beautiful.
that they are listening to this. And if
Yeah.
they're holding back on their work or their voice or doing the epic shit that they're here to do, that they check out your work, because I think it's just so needed and so important. And I'm so excited.
Thank you
So
so much.
you're
Thank you.
welcome. How do people find you? Where do you live on the internet?
Yes, I live in a couple different places.
Mhm,
I'm mostly on Instagram when it comes to social media.
mhm.
Excuse me, I just cleared my throat. I muted myself. Um, you didn't need to hear that on this podcast interview. Um, I'm mostly on Instagram at the Vocal Warrior, although there may be a rebrand coming up. But for now, it's at the Vocal Warrior. My name will always be Elise Besler, will always be there as a searchable. And then my website is thevocalwarrior.com.
Mhm.
And email is Elise at the Vocal Warrior if somebody wanted to email me. And yeah, on the website, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is called the Radical Voice Love Note.
Mm,
Comes out, I used to say every Tuesday, but it then ended up not being every Tuesday. And instead of putting pressure on myself, I just said it will come out a couple of few times a month. And
perfect.
that's where I share some specific, just like some reflections and sometimes a couple of tips, and the SIP method, etc. Um, so yeah, that's where I am on the interwebs.
Yay. Well, I hope people go and search you out. And, your Instagram, you've got your reels. I look forward to them because they're so great. Like just these tiny little tidbits. And I so, what's the word I'm looking for? Feel envious of your ability to communicate so much in so little time, because I'm a words person.
Mm,
I use like it takes me probably like 20 minutes what some people can explain in like two. And I admire that, and I love them because they're so inspirational. So I yeah, definitely, and all of this information will be in the show notes, of course, so folks can just head to the show notes and learn more. um Thank you. This was great. I think this is going to be so helpful to so many folks who listen to the podcast. And I am excited about clear and honest and embodied communication around values and boundaries and desires.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm excited about that too.